Welcome to Channel Today in History. In today's video we will talk about the day, July 3, 1822, creation of the Ministry of Justice in Brazil. Brazil would only have declared its political independence from Portugal, in effect, on September 7, 1822. Until 1815, the future independent nation in America had been a Portuguese colony, and its inhabitants were then logically subject to legislation, Afonsinas, Manuelinas and Philippines, from the metropolis, as well as the others elaborated by the viceroys and governors. With the arrival of the Portuguese royal family in 1808, in the context of the crisis generated by Napoleonic expansion in Europe, the scenario in the colonial environment would quickly change. In the year 1815, with the defeat of Napoleon at the Battle of Waterloo, Belgium, the French power over Europe ended, and the Congress of Vienna was held, in the search for re-establishment by the nations that defeated the French emperor, their territories, and their political power. Portugal would participate in this event, having its regent, Dom João VI, now residing in Brazil, elevated the colony to the category of viceroyalty united to Portugal and the Algarves. Thus, Brazil no longer had colonial status. However, the Porto Revolution, in 1820, in Portugal, imposed on Dom João VI the acceptance of a constitution and his return to Portugal, which took place. The so-called Portuguese courts, victorious in the revolution, although influenced by liberal thought, sought to force Prince Dom Pedro, son of Dom João VI, who had been administering Brazil, to return to Portugal and accept the return of the former colony to his former condition. It is evident that not only the action of the Portuguese prince was the reason for independence, with politicians, the population, and the press participating in the movement that culminated in the definitive separation of Brazil from its former metropolis. In the government of the viceroyalty, Dom Pedro, among other measures, would make changes in the organization of the Brazilian judicial system, removing it from Portuguese influence. On June 3, 1822, Dom Pedro, Prince Regent of Brazil, created the Secretary of State for the Affairs of Justice, by means of a decree endorsed by José Bonifácio de Andrada e Silva. Federal Law 23, of October 30, 1891, changed the name of the agency to Ministry of Justice and Interior Affairs. And, by Federal Decree Law 200, of February 25, 1967, it was renamed simply Ministry of Justice. Among the main attributions of this body, the following stand out: the defense of the legal order, political rights and constitutional guarantees, public safety, the defense of the national economic order and consumer rights, responsibility for matters relating to nationality, immigration and foreigners, and the prevention and repression of money laundering and international legal cooperation. Specific bodies are part of the structure of the ministry, such as the National Archive, the body responsible for the custody and availability of original documents and works aimed at historical research, the National Penitentiary Department, the Federal Police Department, the Federal Public Defender's Office, the Secretariat of Economic Law, and the National Drug Policy Council. The current headquarters of the ministry was inaugurated in Brasilia, also on September 3, 1972, the same day and month of the creation of the then State Secretariat for Justice Affairs. The work was designed by Lucio Costa and Oscar Niemeyer, and consists of a concrete and steel structure, considered a work of art. The documentation drawn up by the then Ministry of Justice and Interior Affairs is found in a research fund at the National Archives, in Rio de Janeiro, available for consultation by any citizen. According to the National Archives, the documentation, produced between 1808 and 1959, consists of notices and ordinances relating to the Cisplatina province, registration of titles of appointments, decrees, notices, ecclesiastical provisions, official letters from the police to the Secretary of State for business of the justice, opinions, legal proceedings, revenue and expenses of the military police of the court, various offices of the General Police Office, the permanent municipal body of the court and the House of Correction, minutes of the meetings of the Inspector Commission of the House of Correction, requests on prisoners and prisons and on the National Guard, reports from the Rio de Janeiro Police, weekly and monthly maps of crimes and other occurrences in several provinces, correspondence between municipal councils with the ministry, requests for slave emancipation, registration of grants, briefs and orders sent to the Imperial Chapel, official letters, petitions, certificate of deeds and other papers referring to the Morgado de Marapacu, terms of agreement on boundaries between the various states in Brazil, approved design for the fire department standard, decree authorizing the transfer of the remains of Dom Pedro 2 degrees, and Dona Teresa Cristina to Brazil. Registration of movable property at the Children's Shelter, the Oswaldo Cruz Institute, and the Jury Court. Registration of enrollments of the Acres Bailiffs. Registration of official letters from the MJNI on the processes of commutation of sentences, requests for pardon, etc. Records of the General Directorate of Statistics containing entries of civil records processes. List of counties, municipalities and districts of Alagoas, Bahia, Ceará, and Rio Grande do Sul. Statistics of civil registries from several states. Proceedings on the organization and administration of justice, military, penitentiary and assistance institutions for minors, the National Archives, the National Press, the Information Services, the Electoral Service, federal territories and civil societies. Occurrences with minors and detainees. Entry, stay, expulsion and deportation of foreigners. Acquisition and loss of political rights. Granting of graces and individual guarantees. Authorization and enforcement of judgments between foreign jurisdictions and between nationals. Extradition and repatriation. Amnesty, conditional release, civil registry notifications. Opinions and consultations with the Attorney General's office and with the National Congress. Appeals against acts of interveners. Political and social order. Rectification of settlements. Budget and financial administration. Consumer goods, assets and personnel. There are also cartographic documents, plans and maps, referring to the urbanization of Brazilian cities, historical monuments, public buildings, plots of land, penal institutions, courts, correctional schools, and the National Archives in the period 1908 to 1957. Did you like the video? In the description you will find the blog link with the full article. Give an incentive by subscribing to the channel, liking, commenting, and sharing with your friends. Hugs. Until the next.